Hey folks, Eddie from Totally Wired Guitars here, and today we're going to be taking a look at this factory special run Fender Japan Charcoal Frost Metallic Jazzmaster. Boy, oh boy, this has got to be one of my favorite Fender Japan Jazzmasters that's ever been in this shop. It is just gorgeous. As you all know, Charcoal Frost Metallic is one of my favorite colors ever. And this thing, just from an aesthetics point of view, is a beauty. Both this as well as the Mystic Aztec Gold one that I've done a review of are special runs for Ishibashi out in Japan. And in addition to those ones, they also came out with a desert sand one with a gold pick guard, as well as black pickup covers and knobs. Now, let's just go over a couple of specs on this model that differentiate it from those other models, as well as just standard traditional 60s Jazzmasters from Japan. So this one features a polyurethane finish over an alder body rather than a basswood body on the standard traditional 60s models. This also features a pale polyurethane finished maple neck, as well as, your matching charcoal frost headstock. As far as I can tell, in comparing to other traditional 60s models, the neck on this is the same spec with a U-shaped neck, a 9.5-inch radius fretboard with vintage size frets. This also has a 41 millimeter or 1 5/8 inch vintage nut width with a bone nut. As you can see there, it's untinted bone. Now this one is extra special as compared to standard traditional 60s and even that Aztec Gold one, because this actually comes with Fender USA Pure Vintage 65 pickups as the stock pickups. This also differs from that Aztec Gold one because it came stock with a Fender 65 reissue Mustang bridge, and the vibrato on here is just the standard Fender Japan tremolo. Now, as far as electronics go, you've probably heard it in my other Fender Japan Jazzmaster and Jaguar reviews from the past couple years. But the electronics in here are already premium. You've got your CTS 1 meg pots for your lead circuit, switchcraft switch for the 3-way toggle, as well as the upper switch. And then you've got some USA spec, but made in Korea rhythm circuit pots. They are the same spec. The roller wheels are US spec with the smaller shaft that would perfectly fit the CTS mini pots that come in the Western made Jazzmasters, as well as the bracket size. This also comes with a fairly nice dark tortoise shell pick guard here, which I think looks absolutely stunning with that charcoal frost finish, as well as the pure vintage off-white or vintage white witch hat knobs. Now lastly, this model, despite all of the other upgrades, still comes with the cheaper economy tuners that for whatever reason Fender Japan has switched to, rather than using the Gotoh SD91s that they had been using for 20 plus years. I feel like this change probably happened maybe 2018 or 2020, but definitely not too long ago. And those tuners unfortunately leave a bit to be desired. They definitely feel cheaper. They work just fine. It's not mandatory that you change them out, but you would definitely feel the difference if you swap them out to higher quality tuners like the ones that I swapped them out for here, which are the Gotoh SD91s. Another thing that I love about this particular guitar, and honestly, the handful that I've had in the shop, is that they tend to be on the lighter side of things. This one here is only 7.8 pounds, which is definitely light as far as Jazzmasters go, and especially because this actually does feature an alder body. This one had come to me from a client who needed the works done on this guitar because it just wasn't playing the way that he personally preferred. The action, unfortunately, was a bit high, and he was getting some buzzing and stuff, which is to be expected, especially because it had traveled a long way over here, and it's been a bit of time since this guitar was produced, despite the fact that it's 2025. And as you know, regardless of how much you paid for a guitar or where it's coming from, unfortunately, the guitars react to the environments in which they are in. And so you might end up with some fret sprout like we did here. You might end up with some unseated frets or unlevel frets over time as the wood kind of expands and contracts. And so we ended up doing a full fret leveling, crowning, dressing, and polish on the frets here to address some high frets that were here that were causing some buzzing, as well as some sharp fret ends that had developed over time. The other thing that we ended up modding on this guitar is the bridge, because unfortunately Fender Japan is still using the 56mm string spacing Mustang bridge, which leaves your strings dangerously close to the edge of the fretboard, resulting in your fingers slipping, especially if you are playing on the treble strings. And so we ended up replacing it with one of the OffsetGuitarsUK's offset bridges, which I've said it many times now, but is probably my new favorite bridge. It's the one that I've installed on so many of my own personal offsets, because it's just a brilliantly designed bridge. As you can see, it's got that 60s look to it and shares some common specs with the stay trem. This actually also has dust caps, which cover where your Allen key or your hex wrench goes to adjust. The legs are nice and tight, pre-Loctited from the factory. And it also has, I don't know if you're going to be able to see there, but the actual intonation screws themselves mount from both sides, keeping them in place, which prevents rattling or any kind of looseness. This does have a 52.5mm string spacing, so it addresses the issues with the stock bridge. And on top of it, these are also nickel-plated brass saddles, so you get that classic look with the advantage with regards to tone and also sustain that you get from having brass saddles. Now, the OffsetGuitarsUK bridge does come with these nylon inserts if you want to prevent your bridge from rocking. But because my client preferred a rocking bridge so that he could retain the dynamics and feel that you get when used in conjunction with the tremolo unit, I ended up using some surgical tubing to cover the legs so that you still get a rocking motion, but it always perfectly returns to center, which is really, really nice, and is an easy and cheap mod that everyone can do. And the last thing that I already mentioned that we changed out here were the tuners. He wanted to have the most stable Jazzmaster possible, and so that entailed swapping out the stock tuners for the Gotoh SD91s. Unfortunately, swapping out to Gotoh SD91s or even some of the Kluson reissue tuners, any high quality vintage style tuner is likely going to require you to remove the existing bushings because the inner bore of those is just too small for the upgraded tuners to fit. Now, there are a multitude of ways to get the existing bushings out, but for me personally, I've been using my arbor press. I use it in conjunction usually with the little steel rod or metal rod that comes with the Gotoh vintage style tuners. These usually are intended for you to be able to easily tap in from the top. On most guitars, these also fit through the back, but unfortunately that didn't work, and I ended up having to use I believe a 1/4-inch screwdriver bit from the back, and then I would use my arbor press to safely push them out. I find that to be the easiest and fastest and also safest way to remove these, because you're also not enlarging the hole unnecessarily. From that point, I did have to use a stepped bit to open up the hole just a little bit more because the holes stock were still too small. And if you do not have a step drill bit, or you're not experienced with using those, because you can definitely go a little too far if you're not careful, then just using a hand reamer is usually the way to go to safely open up those tuner holes. One additional step that I always do if I have to open up those tuner holes is using this little StewMac no chip bit. It is designed specifically for you to kind of open up the paint that surround the holes in the headstock. That way, if you are using a drill or a reamer or anything like that, it prevents the surrounding paint from catching on the teeth or the part of your drill that removes material, which can result in some pretty catastrophic, paint removal that you do not want to happen. In addition to that, another mod that was done on this particular guitar, and that you can come to expect, unfortunately, when you get a Fender Japan guitar sometimes, is that you end up with a very, very loose feeling arm. And so that can happen for two reasons. One, because the teeth inside the collet are not gripping the bottom of the vibrato arm very well. The other reason is because the collet itself doesn't stay very well inside of the pivoting plate within the vibrato unit. And so using some Loctite blue in this case, in addition to the toothed washer, helps to make sure, especially if you end up putting a kink in the arm to make it feel tighter and not as floppy, makes sure that collet does not come loose. And that is definitely a step that you are going to want to take if you end up getting a more recent Fender Japan Jazzmaster or Jaguar, because sometimes that collet can come so loose that it will drop down into the vibrato cavity. Now, one of the things that I personally love most about these traditional 60s guitars is the neck. I find it to be really, really comfortable despite the fact that it has that U-shape designation, which in truth for me is just a full C shape with a little bit more shoulder. When I measured with my calipers, this is 0.88 inches at the first fret, but very little taper going up with a thickness of 0.92 inches at the 12th. If this was as thick as, say, one of the American original 60s necks, or one of the AV65 necks, which sometimes can be really close to being a full inch at the 12th fret, then for me that would be a bit too chunky. But 0.92 inches at the 12th fret is on the slim side, actually, for Jazzmasters. So I find this U-shaped neck to be super comfortable to do chords and leads on, and just overall a really, really nice kind of mid-60s feel to it. Now, if you've ever played an American Vintage 65, or even the American Vintage 2 66, or maybe an upgraded or custom built Jazzmaster that has the pure Vintage 65 pickups in it, it's just the classic bright full mid-60s tone. It is the iconic Jazzmaster tone, but just a bit brighter due to the fact that these ones are the gray bobbin type of Jazzmaster pickup. They definitely have a bit more high end and sparkle to them than, late 50s to early 60s style black bobbin pickups. These ones are also wound with plain enamel wire, which for me have a more kind of glassy tone rather than a vintagey woody tone. I like both styles of Jazzmaster pickup personally, but yeah, these ones, if you like nice sparkling cleans, you don't have to be changing these out if you end up getting one of these charcoal frost metallic special run jazzies. And yeah, in the end, after all that work is done, this thing just plays like a friggin' dream. The action is nice and low, definitely below that 2mm spot that's still considered low action at the 12th fret. After the fret leveling, I was able to dial in the setup to have the truss rod have just a minimal amount of relief, which for me personally makes playing on the neck just feel a lot faster and easier, and also contributes to the overall low action feel on this guitar. Now, these guitars came with 9-gauge strings from the factory. I ended up putting 10 to 46 gauge D'Addario XL strings on this by request of my client. You may have read many a place that 11s are the best gauge for the Jazzmaster, but you can definitely get away with 10s or even 9s. Again, so long as you know what you're doing with regards to setting the Jazzmaster up properly. Also, the mods that we did on this guitar went a long way in just making it feel so much more premium. When I first got it, for example, I really didn't like that wider feel of that 56mm Mustang bridge. It also had loose set screws for adjusting the height of the bridge, and so the OffsetGuitarsUK bridge is just a premium affair through and through. I feel like the guitar now resonates and sustains better after that mod, and now I don't have to worry about any kind of rattles or looseness from the bridge at all. Additionally, the little mods that I had done to the vibrato definitely make it not just serviceable, but feel really, really good. If you've seen any of my other videos on Japanese offsets that have come out over the past, 5 or so years, I feel like they've done things to improve the way that these feel, especially as compared to ones that you've gotten from the 90s or the 2000s. I feel like they're using a more robust spring now. And so long as you address the issues with the collet and the floppy arm, and you also bend the arm to just give yourself a bit more leverage, you get a really, really nice, responsive, bouncy feel that rivals, in my personal opinion, even some of the more recent American vintage units that Fender in the USA has been putting out. And finally, of course, the tuner upgrade. Again, as I had mentioned, these SD91s for me are the gold standard of vintage style tuners. They just feel tighter, more solid, more responsive, and easy to dial in when you're tuning. And I feel like they keep tune better than the stock economy tuners that came on this guitar. So undoubtedly, while you do not have to do that, you will feel the difference if you do end up upgrading the tuners. Now, I haven't looked, and I'm not sure if this particular Ishibashi special run is still being produced, but when these came out, I believe the street price for these were around $1,400 to $1,500 US before any taxes or shipping or fees. Now, unfortunately, many of the infamous guitar scalpers on Reverb and eBay have gotten their hands on these and are marking them up like crazy, with some folks charging $2,500 even before shipping and taxes on these things. And for me, I do not know if it is worth the price, that kind of price. Despite how nice this guitar is, I definitely think that the way to go if you want to get your hands on one of these is by going through a proxy service. I believe Zen Market is one of the most well-known ones. You are definitely going to have to pay some level of import fee in addition to the service fees of using a proxy service. But if you go, I believe, on Ishibashi or some of the other Japanese markets, you might be able to find one of these used for cheaper, so that your final cost for one of these is still within your budget. Now, I know that I sound like a broken record, but time and again, despite the work that had to go into this particular one, the fit and finish and quality control of Fender Japan, especially if you get one brand new shipped to you, a lot of times requires very little work. None of the things that were done here were absolutely mandatory, but to be able to dial in a guitar, for example, to have the lowest possible action, or to address issues with the bridge. The kind of work that ended up going into this ended up turning an already very, very good guitar into a great one. And I would say that this definitely stands toe to toe with regards to just the feel and sound with more expensive American Fenders. If you do not necessarily need a nitro finish, which the downside to some of the more recent, I'd say as of the past 5 years or so, the more recent Fender American Vintage Series guitars that have been coming out, is sometimes the nitro, I feel like, wasn't given enough time to cure, or maybe the formula for the clear coats that they've been using has changed and results in a sticky and gummy feeling neck, especially when they are brand new. And you do not get that here on this polyurethane neck. Now, it obviously depends on the chemical composition of your sweat and the moisture that comes from your hands. Some people absolutely hate glassy, high gloss finish necks, but I think this one is done tastefully, and it just feels really, really good and slick and fast in hand. So would I recommend this guitar? Undoubtedly, if you can get your hands on one of these for under $2,000, closer maybe to what that street price is supposed to be, that $1,400 or $1,500, there is nothing in this price class. Nothing outside of maybe the Fender Vintera 2 limited road worn. There is nothing that is going to get you close to the feel and the sound and the overall quality of this Jazzmaster. And if you end up getting one of those road-worn ones, if you've seen my full review on it, you'll see that it does come with caveats, and they're things that thankfully you will not have to deal with if you decide to get this model instead. I'd say my biggest advice to you is if you know that you do not get on with thick necks, particularly here in the cowboy chord area, I feel like this one is one to skip. But if you're open to a medium C feeling neck, one that has very little taper and is actually still quite thin and playable up the neck, like at the 12th fret, like I'd mentioned before, then this is a really, really amazing Jazzmaster for the money. That, and combined with the fact that it does already come with upgraded hardware, you don't need to deal with the annoying issues that the original threaded saddle bridge that came on the Aztec Gold variant, for example, comes with. The fact that it already has pure vintage 65 pickups and premium spec electronics, and that the rest of the things can be dialed in with a good setup, make this very, very high on my list of Jazzmasters to recommend that you can still get in 2026. Anyway, that is going to do it for this video. I hope you found it enjoyable as well as informative, especially if you've had your eyes in particular on one of these Ishibashi charcoal frost metallic traditional 60s special run Jazzmasters. Whew, that was a mouthful. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Have you played one of these? How does it compare to other Jazzmasters that you played? In particular, how does it compare, for example, to a classic vibe or an American vintage from any year that includes the 62, the 65, the American original 60s, the American vintage 2, or maybe if you've been one of the lucky folks to have a custom shop or even a vintage Jazzmaster. Yeah, if you've played this, how does it compare to those? Definitely let us know down in the comments. I know both myself and the folks who love and watch this channel will appreciate it very much. If you haven't already, please hit that like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell to be notified of new videos as soon as they drop. And don't forget to follow Totally Wired Guitars for more offset guitars buying tips.